I got a lot of comments about this, so I figured it was worth doing because Caitlin Clark was absolutely robbed in the WNBA's latest MVP ladder, I think they call it, which is essentially the rankings. So if you're unaware, the way that the MVP voting works is that the voters submit a list of their top 5 candidates. And then there's a point system based on the order. Obviously, if someone is selected number 1, that helps them in the overall process to possibly be the MVP, much more than if they're selected number 5 on someone's ballot. But using that logic, the WNBA put out a list of the top 5 WNBA MVP candidates at this moment. And it's up on their official website. You can see the ladder right here. Mark Schindler is the author of the piece. Number 1 is A'ja Wilson, which I don't think catches anybody by surprise. She's had a tremendous season. Number 2, Napheesa Collier, who also has been mentioned in this conversation for a minute now. The Lynx are having a great season. She's been great defensively. She's beaten A'ja and Caitlin head-to-head. Sabrina Ionescu of the Liberty, also a very good all-around season, but we'll get to that in a second. Breanna Stewart, another Liberty player. I suppose they're being rewarded for the record. Stewart is the reigning MVP. She is a terrific player. And then Alyssa Thomas of the Connecticut Sun. Honorable mention, Caitlin Clark, along with Kalia Copper. So Clark is not good enough to be on the actual list. She gets an honorable mention. The actual list, top 5, A'ja Wilson, Napheesa Collier, Sabrina Ionescu, Breanna Stewart, Alyssa Thomas. Here's the thing. I don't think you could take umbrage with A'ja or Napheesa being ranked 1 or 2. Or A'ja being ranked 1, even though that was apparently decided before the season started. Apparently it was decided and no one else was allowed to be mentioned. But the bonus for Wilson is she's backed it up with her play. She's had a tremendous, historic season herself. Napheesa is leading a terrific Lynx team. She beat A'ja head-to-head a couple of times. She just got the best of the Fever. The Lynx did, at least as a team. So that's acceptable, reasonable, arguable, all those things. Clark being anywhere else but 3rd, when really you could make the argument she should be 1st or 2nd, is kind of absurd. It really is kind of absurd at this point. I don't know what overlords were serving, who were pleasing, what penance must be paid before one can be properly rated, despite what they're doing. Because if you take the argument of removing said player from a team, is any team falling off worse than the Fever without Clark? You could certainly make that case because you look at their record, they've won more games this year than they did in the last 2 seasons combined. She's scoring or assisting on more points than any player ever. You put those 2 things together, that's a strong MVP case. And then you just look at some of the other folks on the list, and you can't really, unless they're basing it solely on team record, but you would think team record would also help Clark, given the turnaround. But you had Sabrina there at 3rd and Thomas at 5th. And Caitlin has the edge in every statistical category. She's going to pass Sabrina in points per game by the end of this year. Every statistical category over Sabrina. Essentially every statistical category over Alyssa Thomas. I mean, the Sun have a defensive identity, a physical identity that is in part due to Thomas, who is a versatile player, a good player, but she can't score at anywhere remotely near the level of Caitlin Clark. So this whole season, it's like Rookie of the Year. ESPN has Caitlin Clark ranked number 6 in the Rookie of the Year rankings. And then even like as recently as 10 days ago or whatever, Caitlin Clark is 2nd in the Raptor ranking to Angel Reese. Like, it was almost manufactured. Not almost, it was manufactured. That the Rookie of the Year debate. So, in a sense, she was disrespected in that. Now, she gets herself into the MVP conversation, rightfully so, on the merits. Not about viewership, not about attendance, about play on the court, impact on the court. I mean, her averages since the break have come back or out of control. It's like 25 points, almost 6 rebounds, and 9 assists or something like that. And the Fever are 8-2 in that span. And again, the Fever, despite, a lot of the other good players on the team, I mean, I hate doing this because I don't want to take credit away from Kelsey Mitchell or Aaliyah Boston, who have been tremendous, or Lexi Hull, who's added a lot. But they were already there. The player that was added to the team, and then all of a sudden the team goes like this. Does that not speak to value? And then, I mean, we all have eyes. We all see she's a more, Sabrina is a really good all-around player. I'm a fan of Sabrina's game. She doesn't really have any holes, but she's not as dynamic as Clark. And that's painfully obvious. Alyssa Thomas doesn't shoot the ball. You can't tell me she's providing more value, even with a defensive edge, that she's providing more value to the team than Clark. Breanna Stewart is one of the greatest players of all time. I'm not really mad at her being included on any list, but if you're also including Sabrina's having a career year, Stewart is not, they would cancel each other out a bit. To me, it really comes down to A'ja, Nafisa, and Caitlin. And I can accept differing opinions. I can accept arguments. I can accept reasonable analysis. I can accept somebody saying A'ja Wilson's been the best from jump to now while having an historic season 2. She's the MVP. Fine. I can accept the argument for Nafisa, given how good the Lynx are, how they've looked, head to head against some of the other MVP candidates and what she brings defensively. But it's time for others to accept that Clark belongs in that conversation. She has a case for the top spot if we're being real about it, if we're not just, basing it on preconceived notions. And if she doesn't get the top spot, okay, she'll be the favorite probably going into next year for that. But you don't have to punish her because she's a rookie or because she's popular. Because I don't get the argument. That's the part of it I don't like. If I could see the argument, fine. I don't understand the argument. Otherwise, we're just purely basing it on the team standings. And that removes the context of where the Fever would be in the standings without Caitlin Clark. But it feels like we're just going to do this all year. For whatever reason. With the WNBA. What are you going to say?